Officer Mark was known in his small town as a brave and honest man. He had worked in the police force for 10 years, and everyone respected him for his courage. His closest partner was not a human but a German shepherd named Rex. Rex had been trained since he was a puppy and had saved many lives during police missions. Together, they had become a symbol of safety and trust in their town. One sunny morning, Mark received a call about a robbery at the old jewelry store near the town square. He rushed to the scene with Rex sitting beside him in the patrol car. The streets were quiet, and people were watching from their windows. When Mark arrived, he saw two masked men running out of the store, carrying bags full of stolen jewelry. Mark shouted for them to stop, but one of the men turned and fired a gun. The bullet missed Mark by inches. Rex barked loudly, and before Mark could react, Rex chased one of the robbers and tackled him to the ground. Mark handcuffed the robber while Rex stood guard. The other man escaped through the alley, and Mark called for backup. It seemed like another successful case for the brave duo. But something happened that changed Mark's life forever. When the backup officers arrived, one of them searched the robber's bag. Inside, they found jewelry, a small gun, and something else, a small envelope. The officer opened it and looked shocked. It was full of cash and had a note saying, "For Officer Mark, thank you." Everyone looked confused, and the robber shouted, "He was in on it.
He helped us."
He was supposed to take his share." Mark froze. His heart started to race. He tried to explain that he had never seen the money or the note before, but the other officers already looked suspicious. They took the robber's words seriously. Mark's face turned pale as he tried to defend himself, but no one listened. They took him back to the station for questioning. Rex stayed outside the interrogation room, whimpering softly. He did not understand why his master was being treated like a criminal. In the following days, everything went wrong. The news spread fast, and the town that once loved Mark now looked at him with anger. The department launched a full investigation. The robber claimed that Mark was part of their plan and was supposed to make the arrest look real, so they could share the stolen goods later. They even found messages on a phone that seemed to show Mark's number linked to the robbers. Mark tried to tell them it was a setup, that someone must have cloned his phone or framed him, but no one believed him. Mark's lawyer tried to help, but the evidence was strong. The judge declared Mark guilty of robbery, corruption, and even shooting at his own partner during a past case. Something completely false but cleverly planted in the reports. Within weeks, Mark went from being a respected officer to a man sentenced to death for crimes he never committed. The courtroom was silent when the verdict was announced. Mark lowered his head, unable to believe how quickly his world had fallen apart. Outside the courthouse, Rex was waiting, held by another officer. When Mark was being taken away, Rex pulled against the leash, barking and crying. The sound broke everyone's heart. The dog didn't understand the law or the lies. He only knew that his best friend was being taken away. Mark turned his head one last time to look at Rex. His eyes filled with tears. He whispered, "Be good, boy." Then the guards pushed him forward. Rex refused to eat or sleep for days. He was taken to the police kennel, but he kept howling every night. The officers felt sorry for him, but they didn't know what to do. Some said they should send Rex to another handler, but the chief decided to keep him there until Mark's case was fully closed. To everyone, the story was over. But for Rex, it was not. Inside the prison, Mark kept thinking about who could have done this to him. He had no enemies that he knew of. Then he remembered one person, his ex-partner, a man named Tom, who had been removed from the force for taking bribes. Tom had always blamed Mark for reporting him. Could Tom be behind the setup? Mark tried to tell his lawyer, but no one listened. Every day, the date of his execution came closer. Meanwhile, Rex's behavior became strange. One night, a janitor saw him digging near the fence of the kennel. He seemed to be searching for something. The next morning, the officers found that Rex had broken a small piece of wood from the gate and was trying to squeeze through. They strengthened the fence, but Rex didn't stop trying. He would bark toward the town as if calling for someone. Some people said it was useless, that the dog was just sad, but others began to wonder if Rex somehow knew something. A few weeks later, a young journalist named Lisa visited the station. She wanted to write about Mark's story, feeling there was something strange about the case. When she saw Rex, she felt pity for him and decided to include him in her article. As she stood near the kennel, Rex suddenly started barking and pointing toward the storage room behind the building. Lisa felt curious. With permission from the officer on duty, she walked there and saw an old box labeled Evidence Robbery Case. Inside were some old files, including a phone and some photos. When Lisa looked closer, she noticed something strange. The phone number listed in the file didn't match Mark's actual number. She showed it to the officer, who said it must be a mistake. But Lisa felt it was more than that. She started digging deeper, going through reports and call logs. Rex kept barking whenever she got close to something connected to the case. It was as if the dog was guiding her. That night, Lisa stayed late in her office, comparing documents. The more she read, the more she realized that Mark might have been framed. The phone records were altered, and one of the witnesses had used a fake ID. She couldn't believe it. Someone had planned this whole thing perfectly. The next day, she decided to visit Mark in prison to hear his side of the story. When Mark saw her, he looked tired and hopeless. But when she told him about Rex's strange behavior and what she had found, a small spark of hope appeared in his eyes. "Rex never gives up," he said softly. "If he's still fighting, maybe there's still a chance." Lisa promised to keep digging. As she left the prison, she looked up at the sky. The truth was buried deep, but she was determined to find it. Somewhere, hidden behind lies and betrayal, the answer waited. And Rex, the loyal dog, was about to do something that would shock everyone and change everything. Days passed, and the town slowly forgot about Officer Mark. To most people, he was now just another criminal who had fooled everyone. But Rex never forgot his master. Every night he would sit by the gate of the kennel, staring at the road, waiting for Mark to return. He didn't understand why everyone treated Mark like a bad person. In his heart, he knew that Mark was good. The officers at the station started to notice Rex's strange behavior. He would growl whenever Tom, Mark's old partner, came around the building. Tom had been hired back as a consultant for security work after Mark's arrest, something that made many people uncomfortable. Rex refused to go near him and barked whenever he saw him. Tom would laugh and say, "That dog's gone crazy since his master got locked up." But deep down, Rex's instincts were never wrong. Lisa, the young journalist, kept visiting the police station. She often sat near Rex's kennel and talked to him softly. "You know something, don't you?" she would whisper. Rex would wag his tail and stare at her, as if trying to answer. Lisa had already found a few clues showing that the evidence used against Mark was not real. The phone records didn't match, and one of the witnesses had disappeared. She wanted to find more proof, but she needed something big, something that could turn the whole case around. One evening, as she was leaving the station, she saw Tom arguing with another officer near the parking lot. Tom looked nervous and kept saying, "No one will ever find out." Lisa pretended not to listen, but she caught a few words that stayed in her mind. Old warehouse, and the plan worked. She knew she had to check it out. Later that night, Lisa went to the old warehouse district with a flashlight. The streets were empty, and the wind was cold. She searched for any sign of what Tom had mentioned. After a few minutes, she found a locked door with a broken handle. She pushed it open and stepped inside. Dust filled the air and the floor creaked beneath her feet. In the corner of the room, she saw a pile of boxes labeled "Police Evidence, Old Files." When she opened one of them, she froze. Inside were several items that had been reported missing from the robbery case, including jewelry and fake ID cards. She took photos with her phone and quickly left. The next morning, she returned to the station and showed the pictures to the chief. The chief frowned but didn't seem surprised. "Lisa, you're digging into something dangerous," he said. "Tom has powerful friends, be careful." But Lisa refused to stop. She told the chief that she wanted to see Rex again. When she approached his kennel, Rex stood up and barked twice, then pointed his nose toward the office where Tom usually sat. Lisa understood the message. That afternoon, something strange happened. Tom came to the station looking nervous. He told the officers that Rex had become too aggressive and should be put down. "He's dangerous now," Tom said. "He attacked me yesterday." But one of the officers, a kind man named Ben, spoke up. "That's not true," he said. "Rex didn't attack anyone, he just barked. You must have scared him." Tom glared at Ben but said nothing more. Lisa overheard the conversation and realized that Tom was trying to get rid of Rex because the dog might expose him somehow. She decided to act fast. That night, with the help of Officer Ben, she entered the kennel quietly. Rex wagged his tail when he saw her. She whispered, "We're going to find the truth together." Ben unlocked the gate and let Rex out. They placed a small tracker on his collar so they could follow him if needed. Once free, Rex didn't waste a second. He ran out of the station, following a scent only he could recognize. Lisa and Ben followed him in a car, keeping a safe distance. The dog led them through narrow streets, across a bridge, and finally stopped near the same old warehouse Lisa had visited before. He barked loudly and scratched the door. When they entered, Rex went straight to a corner and started digging under a pile of wooden crates. Lisa and Ben helped clear the area. Beneath the crates, they found a metal box. Inside it were documents, money and photos showing Tom meeting with the robbers before the jewelry store crime. Lisa couldn't believe it. The proof was right there. Suddenly, they heard footsteps. Tom had followed them. He walked in with a flashlight and said coldly, "You should have stayed out of this, Lisa." Rex growled and stood in front of Lisa, ready to protect her. Tom pointed a gun at them. "Give me the box," he said. Lisa's hands shook, but she refused. "You framed Mark," she said. "He didn't do anything wrong." Tom laughed. "That fool took everything from me, my job, my respect. I made sure he paid for it." At that moment, Rex lunged forward and knocked the gun out of Tom's hand. The weapon slid across the floor. Tom tried to fight back, but Rex was faster. He grabbed Tom's sleeve and pulled him down. Ben quickly grabbed the gun and aimed it at Tom. "It's over," Ben said firmly. They called the police immediately. Within minutes, other officers arrived and arrested Tom. When they searched his car, they found more fake evidence and money from the robbery. Everything pointed to Tom as the true criminal who had framed Mark to take revenge. The next day, the news spread across the town. People were shocked to learn that the loyal officer they had once condemned was innocent. The real culprit was the man they had trusted again. The chief ordered a full review of Mark's case. Lisa submitted all her reports, including the photos, and mentioned how Rex had helped find the hidden box. Everyone called Rex a hero. In the prison, Mark was sitting quietly in his cell when the guard came running. "You're free," the guard said with a smile. The truth came out. Tom confessed. Mark stood still for a moment, unable to believe what he had heard. His eyes filled with tears as he walked out into the sunlight. Outside the prison gates, Rex was waiting. When he saw Mark, he ran as fast as he could and jumped into his arms. Mark hugged him tightly. "You did it, boy," he whispered. "You saved me." The officers and townspeople who had come to see the moment clapped and cheered. Some cried, realizing how wrongly they had judged Mark. Lisa stood a few steps away, smiling. She had seen many stories in her career, but this one touched her heart more than any other. She watched as Mark knelt beside Rex, who licked his face happily. The bond between them was something no lie or injustice could ever break. That night, Mark sat under the stars with Rex lying beside him. The nightmare was finally over, but he knew that it was Rex's loyalty that had brought him freedom. The world had seen the truth because one dog refused to forget his master. Mark was free at last. The town that had once turned against him now welcomed him back with tears and applause. Newspapers wrote stories about his innocence, and television channels showed Rex's brave actions again and again. Everyone called Rex a hero, and people brought him treats and toys as a sign of respect. For the first time in many months, Mark smiled freely. He was home and his loyal friend was by his side. Lisa visited often. She and Mark became close friends, and together they started planning how to rebuild his life. But deep in his heart, Mark knew something still felt wrong. The evidence against him had been planted carefully, and Tom had confessed that he was not working alone. Someone else had helped him, someone powerful. The thought bothered Mark day and night. One evening, Mark sat on his porch with Rex lying beside him. The air was quiet, but Rex suddenly lifted his head and growled softly. Mark looked up and saw a black car driving slowly past the house. The car did not stop, but the way it moved made Mark uneasy. He had learned to trust Rex's instincts. The dog only growled when danger was near. The next day, Mark went to the police station to meet Chief Allen. The chief looked tired but relieved that Mark was free. Mark thanked him for allowing Lisa to investigate the case, but then he asked, "Chief, Tom said he wasn't working alone. Do you know what he meant?" The chief looked down at his desk and sighed. "Mark, there are things I can't discuss openly. The department had some internal problems. Not everyone wanted justice to win." His words made Mark's stomach tighten. "Are you saying someone inside the police wanted me gone?" The chief didn't answer directly, but said, "Be careful who you trust." Later that week, Lisa found something strange while reviewing old reports. There were missing files related to the robbery case, and the security footage from the jewelry store had been replaced with edited clips. Someone had erased important parts, especially the moments before the robbery began. Lisa told Mark about it, and they decided to investigate together. Rex joined them, always alert and watchful. They visited the jewelry store again. The shop owner, an elderly man named Mr. Harris, welcomed them kindly. "Officer Mark, I always believed you were innocent," he said. "That night was chaos. I remember another man outside the store before the robbery, but no one ever asked me about him." Mark leaned forward. "What did he look like?" Mr. Harris thought for a moment. "He wore a dark coat and had a badge on his belt." "I thought he was a police officer." Mark exchanged a look with Lisa. "A badge," he repeated quietly. "That means someone from the department might have been there before it happened." When they left the store, Mark felt the same chill he had felt the night before. Someone was still hiding the truth. That evening, while Mark was feeding Rex, he heard a noise outside his house. Rex barked and ran to the door. Mark grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside. The yard was empty, but on the ground near the fence he found a small envelope. Inside was a note that read, "Stop digging or you'll lose more than your badge." There was no signature. Mark's heart raced. Whoever was behind this was watching him closely. The next morning, Mark went to see Lisa. She read the note and frowned. "This means we're close to something big," she said. "We can't stop now." Mark agreed, though he knew it could be dangerous. They decided to check Tom's phone records, hoping to find a connection to someone else in the department. With the help of Officer Ben, they accessed the call logs and discovered several calls to an unknown number labeled only as A. The number was linked to an address near the edge of town, a small cabin in the woods. That night, Mark and Lisa drove there with Rex. The road was dark and narrow, surrounded by trees. When they reached the cabin, the lights inside were off. Mark parked the car and whispered, "Stay close." Rex walked ahead, sniffing the ground. Suddenly, he stopped and started barking toward the back of the cabin. Mark followed and found a broken window. Inside, they could see boxes stacked against the wall. Lisa used her flashlight to look around. "These are police evidence boxes," she said. "They shouldn't be here." As they stepped inside, Mark noticed something shiny on the floor, a police badge with the number scratched off. Before he could pick it up, they heard footsteps behind them. A man appeared in the doorway holding a gun. It was Officer Reed, one of the senior officers who had testified against Mark during the trial. "You should have stayed quiet," Reed said. Tom took the blame, but he was never supposed to talk. Lisa's heart pounded. "So it was you," she said. "You framed Mark to cover your crimes." Reed laughed coldly. "You think this was about money?" "It was about control. Mark found out about my deals with the smugglers years ago. I couldn't let him ruin me." He pointed the gun at Mark. "You ruined my life once. Now I'll finish yours." Before Reed could fire, Rex leaped forward. He grabbed Reed's arm and the gun went off, hitting the ceiling. Mark rushed forward and tackled Reed to the ground. The struggle was rough, but Mark managed to push the gun away. Rex held Reed down until Ben and other officers who had followed the tracker signal from the car arrived to arrest him. Reed was taken into custody, and the truth finally came out. He had been working with Tom and a group of smugglers who used police protection to move stolen goods. When Mark started asking questions, they decided to silence him by framing him for the robbery. With Tom and Reed both in prison, the last pieces of the puzzle were complete. The town celebrated again, but this time the happiness felt different. It was not just about Mark's freedom. It was about justice truly being served. Chief Allen apologized to Mark in front of the department and said, "You were the best officer we had and we failed you. I promise this department will change." Mark nodded quietly. He didn't need fame or praise. All he wanted was peace and a normal life again. He adopted Rex officially and decided to move to a small farmhouse outside town. Lisa visited often. bringing food and stories for both of them. The three had become a family built by truth and courage. As the sun set one evening, Mark watched Rex running through the fields, chasing birds and wagging his tail happily. For the first time, everything felt right. The pain of the past was still there, but so was hope. Mark smiled and whispered, "You saved my life twice, Rex." The dog looked back, his eyes full of love and loyalty. But as Mark sat down to rest, a distant car stopped at the end of the dirt road. A man stepped out wearing a dark coat. He watched the farmhouse for a few seconds before turning away. Mark didn't see him, but Rex did. The dog growled softly, sensing something was not over yet. Mark thought life would finally return to normal. He and Rex had moved to the small farmhouse on the edge of town. The fields stretched for miles, and the quiet mornings were peaceful. Rex loved running through the grass, chasing imaginary intruders and guarding his master. Mark spent his days fixing the farmhouse, planting a small garden, and reading old files Lisa had given him. For the first time in months, he felt safe, but peace did not last long. One evening, while Mark and Rex were walking near the edge of the woods, Rex froze and growled. His ears stood up and he sniffed the air carefully. Mark followed his gaze and saw a shadow moving between the trees. He reached for his phone to call Lisa, but the shadow vanished before he could get a clear look. Rex barked, alert and tense, as if warning Mark that something dangerous was close. The next morning, Lisa arrived at the farmhouse bringing sandwiches and files about old cases. She noticed Rex pacing near the woods. "Something is bothering him," she said. Mark nodded. "I saw someone last night. I couldn't get a good look, but I'm sure it wasn't anyone from town." Lisa examined the files while Mark filled her in on what he had seen. They realized the mysterious man might be connected to the network that Tom and Officer Reed had worked with. The organization had contacts in several towns, moving stolen goods and covering their tracks. Mark understood that even though Tom and Reed were behind bars, the larger threat still existed. That night, Mark decided to stay awake with Rex. He sat on the porch, listening to the sounds of the farm. Around midnight, he noticed a small light moving near the tree line. Rex barked loudly and ran toward the woods. Mark grabbed a flashlight and followed. Rex stopped at a shallow ditch and growled. There, partially hidden by leaves, was a small backpack. Mark carefully opened it and found documents and photos showing more illegal operations by the same group. There were names of officers who had taken bribes and notes about upcoming thefts. It was proof that the criminal network was bigger than anyone had realized. Suddenly, movement came from the trees. A man stepped forward wearing a dark jacket and a cap that shadowed his face. "Stop right there," Mark called, but the man ignored him and tried to grab the backpack. Rex leaped forward and bit the sleeve of the man's jacket. The intruder cursed and pushed the dog back. Mark ran and tackled him to the ground. Lisa, who had followed in her car, quietly arrived and called the police. The man struggled, but Rex stayed close, growling and ready to attack if he tried anything. When the local officers arrived, they took the man into custody. Under questioning, he refused to give his name but dropped a phone with more evidence about the group's operations. The next day, the news reached the town. Once again, people were shocked to learn that the criminal network had members in high positions. Lisa wrote another article detailing the events, careful to keep Mark and Rex safe while exposing the truth. The article praised Rex's bravery, calling him the hero dog who stopped the shadows. Even with this success, Mark knew the fight was not over. The captured man only revealed a small part of the network. There were more people involved, and some had influence over authorities beyond the town. Mark began planning carefully. He would not rush. He knew patience and strategy were necessary. Mark and Rex spent days checking the documents and making a list of people who could be connected. They marked addresses, suspicious activities, and possible contacts. Rex helped in ways that surprised Mark. He could detect subtle smells, recognize voices on recordings, and sometimes reacted to a person's intentions before anyone else noticed. The bond between man and dog became even stronger. One afternoon, while reviewing the files, Mark noticed a photo that made his blood run cold. It showed a warehouse near the highway, with boxes marked with the same logo as the stolen jewelry. The photo had been taken from a distance, but Mark recognized the location. This was likely a main hub for the criminal group. He and Lisa decided they had to investigate. The next morning, Mark, Lisa, and Rex drove toward the warehouse. The area was isolated, surrounded by fields and forests. Rex was alert, sniffing the air constantly. When they reached the warehouse, Mark parked the car a safe distance away. He noticed cameras on the building and realized they were being watched. Rex growled, warning that danger was very close. Mark and Lisa approached cautiously. They found a side door that was slightly open. Rex led the way silently, stopping whenever he sensed someone nearby. Inside, the warehouse was full of boxes and crates, some labeled with the stolen goods logo, others with fake police evidence. Mark realized this was where stolen items were being stored and redistributed. As they moved further inside, they heard voices. Two men were talking about shipments and timing. One mentioned a name, and Mark recognized it from the files, an officer who had been trusted in the department. The network had insiders everywhere. Rex suddenly barked sharply. The two men turned, surprised to see a dog and two people inside the warehouse. One man pulled out a phone to call for help. Rex charged, knocking the phone to the floor. Mark grabbed a bag and started collecting evidence quickly. Lisa took photos of documents and boxes, ensuring they had proof. The men tried to chase them, but Rex blocked their path, growling and snapping. Mark and Lisa ran toward the exit with the evidence, with Rex leading the way. Once outside, they ran to their car and Mark started the engine. The men shouted but did not follow. Then beyond the woods, they drove straight to the police station and handed over all the materials to Chief Allen. The chief called a special task force to investigate immediately. The evidence was solid, leaving no doubt that a large criminal network had infiltrated parts of the police department. Arrests were made, and Mark's name became a symbol of courage and justice. Back at the farmhouse, Mark sat on the porch with Rex beside him. The sunset painted the fields in orange and red. Lisa visited with a basket of food and smiled. "You did it again," she said. "You stopped them before they could hurt anyone else." Mark scratched Rex behind the ears. "I couldn't have done this without you," he said. Rex wagged his tail and leaned closer, happy and proud. The dog had saved Mark multiple times, and Mark had learned that loyalty, courage, and trust could overcome even the darkest threats. For the first time since the trial, Mark felt truly safe. The shadows that had haunted his life were finally fading, but he knew that evil sometimes returned in unexpected ways. Rex stayed close, alert, and ready for anything. Mark understood that together, they could face anything. That night, as the wind whispered through the trees and the farmhouse lights glowed warmly, Mark sat quietly on the porch. Rex rested his head on Mark's lap. For now, the nightmare was over, but they would always remain vigilant. Shadows could return, but so could courage, loyalty, and the bond between a man and his dog. The farmhouse was quiet in the early morning. Mark and Rex were outside, enjoying the cool air. Birds sang in the trees and the fields glowed with dew. For the first time, Mark felt a sense of real peace. He had faced betrayal, injustice, and danger, but with Rex and Lisa, he had overcome it all. Yet he knew the criminal network was not completely finished. Some members were still free and their leader remained unknown. Mark decided to plan carefully. He would not act alone this time. Lisa agreed to help, and Chief Allen assigned a small task force of trusted officers to support them. Rex would be the key. His intelligence, courage, and loyalty made him more than just a police dog. He was a partner who could sense danger before anyone else. Their first lead came from a series of coded messages found in the last warehouse. The messages suggested a meeting between the remaining members of the network at an abandoned factory on the outskirts of a neighboring town. Mark and Lisa studied the location on maps, planning every step. They knew the criminals would be armed and dangerous. Rex, sensing the tension, stayed close to Mark, alert and ready. That night, they left in a black SUV with the trusted officers. The drive was long, but no one spoke. Everyone focused on the mission. Rex sat in the back, his ears twitching at every sound. He sensed they were being watched, but he also knew he had to stay calm and protect Mark at all costs. When they reached the factory, Mark parked the SUV in a safe spot. The building was old, with broken windows and rusted doors. Shadows moved inside and muffled voices could be heard. Mark signaled to the team to split into small groups. Lisa stayed close, documenting everything. Rex led the way as Mark followed. Inside, the factory smelled of oil and metal. Crates and barrels blocked some of the hallways. The group could hear the criminals talking about shipments, money, and a plan to escape to another city. One man was giving orders. Mark recognized him immediately. It was Commander Hall, a man with influence over corrupt officers and criminals alike. He had been the hidden leader of the network all along. Mark signaled the team to prepare for action. He whispered to Rex, "It's time, boy." Rex growled softly and nodded, understanding the mission. With precise movements, the team surrounded the factory. Mark, Lisa, and Rex entered from the side door. The criminals were surprised to see anyone there. Rex barked loudly, charging forward and scattering the group. Some tried to grab weapons, but Rex blocked their path, biting sleeves and pushing them back without harming them severely. Mark moved quickly, grabbing one of the men attempting to escape. The others were confused and scared. The team worked together, capturing each criminal. Hall tried to run toward the back, but Rex was faster. The dog leaped in front of him, forcing him to the ground. Mark held Hall firmly while the officers took control of the situation. Once the criminals were secured, Mark searched the office inside the factory. He found ledgers, money, and files detailing every illegal activity the network had carried out over the years. This evidence was enough to put them all in prison. Lisa photographed everything carefully, making sure nothing would be lost or destroyed. After the arrests, the authorities praised Mark, Lisa, and Rex for their bravery. The news traveled fast, and the story of the cop and his German shepherd became famous throughout the region. Rex received a special medal for bravery, the first dog to ever receive such an honor in the state. Mark smiled proudly as Rex wagged his tail and barked happily. With the criminal network dismantled, Mark returned to the farmhouse. Life slowly returned to normal. He worked on repairing the fields, planting crops, and spending time with Rex. Lisa often visited, bringing news from the town and helping with minor projects. The farmhouse, once a place of quiet solitude, now felt alive with hope and laughter. One afternoon, Mark received a letter in the mail. It was from the judge who had originally sentenced him. The letter apologized for the mistake and acknowledged the bravery and honesty he had shown throughout the ordeal. Mark read it aloud to Rex, who wagged his tail as if understanding every word. The letter also included a small gift, a badge commemorating his service. Even though he had been wrongly accused, Mark placed the badge on a shelf above the fireplace, a symbol of his journey and the hardships he had overcome. He looked at Rex and said, "We made it, boy. We proved the truth and we did it together." Rex barked softly and lay down at his feet, content and loyal as ever. The town began to trust Mark again. He was invited to speak at the police academy about loyalty, courage, and the importance of truth. He spoke about the bond between a handler and a canine, emphasizing that teamwork and trust could overcome even the darkest challenges. Rex sat beside him during the presentation, receiving pats and treats from everyone present. Months passed and Mark focused on rebuilding his life. He expanded his small farm, started raising a few animals, and even took in a few stray dogs that reminded him of Rex when he was a puppy. Rex remained by his side, always vigilant, always loyal. The bond they shared was unbreakable, strengthened by every challenge and danger they had faced together. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned golden, Mark walked through the fields with Rex. The air was warm, and the wind carried the smell of fresh grass. Mark reflected on the past year, the betrayal, the trial, the danger, and finally the triumph. He realized that life was unpredictable, but courage, loyalty, and truth would always guide the way. Rex ran ahead, chasing a butterfly, then returned to Mark's side. He nudged Mark's hand, reminding him that no matter what happened, they were a team. Mark knelt down and hugged him tightly. "You saved me more times than I can count," he said. "I will never forget it." Rex licked his face, happy and proud. From that day on, Mark and Rex lived peacefully. They knew danger could return, but they were prepared. Together they had faced lies, betrayal, and threats, and together they had triumphed. The townspeople remembered the courage of the officer who had been wrongly condemned, and the German shepherd who refused to give up. Their story became a legend of loyalty and bravery, inspiring everyone who heard it. And so, under the open sky and the warm sun, Mark and Rex continued their lives. The farmhouse was safe, the fields were green, and the bond between man and dog was stronger than ever. They had faced the unthinkable, survived, and proved that truth and loyalty could conquer even the greatest darkness. Mark looked at Rex one last time as the stars began to appear in the sky. "We did it, boy. We really did it." Rex wagged his tail, resting his head on Mark's shoulder. Together they watched the stars, knowing that no challenge could ever break the bond they shared. The world had tested them, but they had passed, and the unthinkable had been done, not by force but by courage, trust, and the unwavering loyalty of a German shepherd.